3 articles, and they're all relatively brief. Have to do with technology life cycles. First one is a column I did for Baseline a few years ago. It has to do with technologies, particularly emerging technologies, and the pitfalls you may have from them. Firefly technology, what I call Firefly, is that you have there's this great new technology coming out. It can be a language, it can be a library, it can be an engine. This will be great, this will solve our problems. And you get the 1.0 release, and it's not quite ready for prime time, but by golly, the 1.5 release, which is due out in November, will be great. 1.5 comes out, and it's like, yeah, I'm not sure I want to rely on that one too. And say, well, 2.0 is going to be wonderful, and 2.0 comes out a year after that. It's like, no, it's still not there. In the meantime, you've wasted a year and a half. Yeah.
Can you give us examples of each of these?
I can try. What's a good example of Firefly? Most of this is huh? And there's sort of a different, you have Firefly, which is something comes out and it just never materializes. Underdone is something that may actually be useful, but it's just been released too soon. So the two of them are similar. So Open Sky, No Man's Sky. Well, actually, No Man's Sky is pretty nice now, but yeah, it's taken a while to get to that point. With Firefly, it's like you give up, which is what happened with a lot of their audience. I bought No Man's Sky right off the bat.
Okay.
There were no sandworms. I basically played around with it and put it on the shelf and waited, and they came back with their first big release sort of a year later, something like that. And I played with it some there, and I'm mentally aware with it, and I've got to sort of get myself to a point where I'm willing to invest some time to where I care about it.
Are there sandworms now?
Huh? No, there are no sandworms now.
It's not quite functional.
The Underdone, back when I was writing for Macworld, which was sadly before all of you were born, which makes me feel old. I was at a Macworld Expo interviewing the product manager. Apple was still trying to revise its internal Macintosh OS. They're releasing version System 7.0. This would have been about 1990, 91. And the product manager was giving me a private demonstration. They were just announcing it there at the expo and so on. And went through all the details, and when he's all over, he looked at me expectantly and said, "So what do you think?" And I said, "I saw someone walking around the trade show yesterday with a t-shirt that said, 'I'm waiting for System 7.0.1. And he sort of winced. How many of you, when there's a .0 release of the latest operating system, say, Windows, iOS, whatever, you immediately rush to do it, or you sit back and say, I'm going to wait for a few more releases before downloading it?
Literally every game that EA has ever made.
Well, there is that too, yes.
Depends on the context, but a lot of the time yellow.
I feel like it's really difficult with OSs, especially because they have so much dependent software. Whenever there's a new Mac OS, I usually wait until it's been about 6 months.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, all of my Microsoft programs break.
Yep.
And half of my other programs do.
Yeah, it's a problem. Actually, I've been amused, maybe too kind of word, but I've been fascinated to watch the iOS 11.
Morbid curiosity.
Just it's like they keep pushing releases out, and then new things break. It's like, guys, just get it together.
And then they ask, what's a computer?
Yeah. Oh yes, sorry. I think that's one of the stupidest ads I've ever seen. All things considered.
Did you hear about NPM 5.7.0?
No.
Yeah, NPM 5.7.0 was a pre-release that was announced as a full release, so a lot of people switched to it. However, if you updated packages with sudo on Linux with npm 5.7.0, it would start overriding file system permissions of critical system files.
Sorry, what?
Yeah.
Say that again
Like,
slowly.
like etc and bin and user bin, it would change the owner of them. Yeah. So
Anyway.
it basically like break a system unless you
Yeah.
can recover it.
Okay.
So you have that. You know, Fireflies is something that never quite materializes, underdone as you're adopting it too soon. Conveyor belt. Technologies that are going away. You know they have a limited lifespan. You know, for example, there's going to be another release at some point. Windows 8 was sort of a conveyor belt, among other things. Or Windows Vista. I actually looked up desktop OS share and Windows Vista, which wasn't that long ago, is like 0.5%. And I don't know who the poor fools are who are still running it, but
I think I actually know the answer.
Grandma's
to
one of
huh? Your grandma?
So it's like the IRS actually, like they had to have like a major contract with Microsoft to support, like I think it's like Windows Vista because it's reached end of life. And they're like, now we don't need to upgrade.
Yeah, that happens a lot in the government military. Yeah.
Out of curiosity, how much was Windows XP?
Actually, I'll show you in just a second. It shows up. It's still measurable. There's a lot of stuff still running on XP.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's actually probably more than the chart shows. We've got that in a second.
Might be XP.
Landfill. Landfill is, Firefly dangles you for a while. I mean, No Man's Sky is still out there. Landfill is the stuff that comes out and just dies right off the bat. My favorite from, again, before you were born, back in the PC era, IBM first came out with the IBM PC, which was sort of considered the first serious business thing, and they wanted to get into the home market. So they came out with the PC Junior, which was an absolute disaster. The keyboard was awful. It's described as a Chiclets keyboard, though I don't know if any of you are old enough to actually ever eat Chiclets chewing gum. Little glossy squares of chewing gum. Bad keyboard, bad design, everything else, and unsold units literally did go into a landfill. It was a disaster. So these are things to keep in mind when you're evaluating, adopting an emerging technology, is do they look like they may fall into one of these four categories? And you have to decide what to do appropriately. Now, for systems you're building, the arc of engineering. And this is a very simple concept. We're going to spend a lot of time here. Most systems under development hit a sweet spot at some point. It's kind of like hitting your prime, which I'm about 20, 25 years past. But you hit a sweet spot, the code's good, it's solid, it's working well, and then from then on, it just doesn't seem to ever be as good again. Frankly, I think iOS is sort of, without some serious quality engineering, is on a downward slope here.
Yeah.
And I say that as someone who's been with iOS for a long time. It's like, things used to just work well.
No, that's totally fair.
But then Apple started making my music disappear off my iPhone. It's my music. I loaded it there. Don't touch that. And this will happen with your own systems, the ones that are under maintenance. You get a point where the system becomes bloated, where you lose institutional knowledge about it. It outgrows the original foundation. The market is changing. Backwards compatibility is maintained at all costs. This again, when you're dealing with an existing system or planning for a new one you're building, keep this in mind because this is reality. Most organizations do not plan for end of life for new systems they are developing. They should. Now, sometimes they don't have to because there are systems that hang around for an unbelievably long time. you have the IRS and the FAA still running off of old mainframes that should have been retired 30 or 40 years ago. That's a whole other story.
What happens when those things break? Like, do we all just get like a free refund that year?
No, yes.
So, in terms of software, I know one of the ways companies try to avoid this is by going into like a subscription model. Like Adobe Creative Cloud, though I absolutely hate that they've gone to a subscription model and I can't just have my PDF software stay working, I understand that that also means the software will stay up to date.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that kind of concept?
I don't like subscription models, but like you, I'm largely resigned to them. You're talking to someone who was still on Microsoft Office 2003 up until about 3 years ago. Because I didn't like the ribbon interface, you know, and I finally bit the bullet and upgraded to everything. I still swear at a lot of stuff, especially when I'm trying to find stuff I could find in like 2 seconds in a menu. It's like, okay, where did they put this? What have they done with this, and so on. That said, it does keep it up to date. On the other hand, things will drop out over time even with the subscription model. I was a big fan of Visio for many, many, many years. And it's hard. It's actually hard to buy a Visio license at this point without paying through the nose. It was one of my favorite drawing tools. I have another set of tools that are specific to legal casework that I would automatically install on every new computer I had, and they went to a subscription model and a pricey subscription model.
And then your license is apparently run out now.
Well, now the online registration stuff no longer works.
Yeah.
That's about a year ago, so I can no longer install the old version and authenticate them. So now I just use other stuff. I'm not happy about it, but that's life. Okay. Now this. Back in 1996, for Windows Magazine, for Windows Magazine, I wrote an article called Windows Forever and Ever. And wrote, back then, as impossible as it may seem, Windows may still be dominant in 2025. This is as of last month. We're only 7 years away from that date. I guarantee you that for desktop systems, in 2025, it's not going to look much different than this. And the key thing here is there are technologies that entrench themselves. And they often entrench themselves. In fact, they often entrench themselves not because of the technology itself, but because they displace or block competing technologies. With Windows, you have file structure, you have application file types, you have standards within organizations, and it's hard to replace. I'm going to get to you in a second. This, by the way, this phenomenon is not limited to computer software or even hardware. This is one of the reasons why electric cars have such a hard time, among other things, why electric cars have such a hard time making penetration. Our infrastructure is all set up for gas and diesel cars. That investment in technology, the infrastructure has developed over 100 years. You don't have the same number of charging stations that you have as gas stations. You don't have some of the same financial incentives for setting up charging stations. It's why you have, for example, Tesla is underwriting or installing their own charging stations. Technologies entrench themselves, and they can block other technologies. The way that you replace it is you make sure with the new technologies, the new technology not only has to be demonstrably better, it has to be able to be used without abandoning your existing technology. When mobile phones came out, it wasn't a choice between whether you have a landline or a mobile phone. You just bought a mobile phone, but you still had a landline. Most of you, how many of you have landlines? Yeah, there we go. I don't anymore. When we moved to, we discovered, we lived in Colorado for 9 years, and during those 9 years, by the end of it, 90% of our landline calls, if not more, were telemarketers or things like that. So we moved here to Utah. We have no landline. It's just mobile phones now. Yes?
I think this is part of why certain technologies that are, there'll be an announcement from a company that they're going to make something more open. For instance, Apple at one point announcing that Apple Messages would eventually be available on Android, and then backtracking that because, in my opinion at least, as someone that used to use an iPhone, I feel like Apple Messages is the only thing keeping an iPhone alive at this point. And the fact that it can't be used on Android is very frustrating for Android users.
Yeah. That's the key point. Other examples of this replacement, and again, this is how old I am. I remember when CDs came out. You had one CD player you could buy. It was the Sony Discman D5, pricey. I bought mine in 1985. You go to a record store, and it was all vinyl albums, which of course would be cool nowadays, and one little stand of CDs. But the point is that you could use CDs and not abandon your existing records. You know, you plug them into the aux, plug your CD player into the aux port and play it through your stereo, and so on and so forth. But it offered clear advantages over vinyl, and I watched this whole migration. You know, flat screen or CRTs to flat screen TVs. There are technologies that can supplant by not forcing you to abandon the existing one. With Microsoft, just no one's gotten traction. I dare say but what you have, now what's been the slipstream technology that's worked against Microsoft? Mobile devices. You don't have to choose between a computer and a mobile device. You can have both. But you start using the mobile devices more and more and the computers less and less. I will be interested. I'm not sure I will live long enough to see the end of Microsoft's dominance, quite frankly. I think they could still dominate for another 25 to 30 years. And yes, PC shipments are declining, but there's a couple billion PCs out there. And because the entrenchment, given the fact that you have the IRS and the FAA still using mainframes from 40 years ago or longer, PCs are going to be around for a long, long time. Yes?
Well, not only that, they've also have diversified into other markets and are growing pretty fast in those. One of their fastest growing divisions of Microsoft financially, what's bringing on a lot of the newest profits is Azure.
Yeah.
And having those types of resources as well, they're pretty safe.
Oh, well, Microsoft is safe. That's not what I'm worried about. The issue is,
The dominant.
how long
Windows.
will we have Windows laptops? Will we ever replace these? But that's a whole other discussion. And let's take a 10-minute biology break, and we'll tackle facts and fallacies.